Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. In this video, we're going to talk about food inflation, which has crept its way into Age of Empires 2 with some interesting knock-on effects. To dial the clock back and set up the discussion, for many years the starting market prices had wood and food at 130 gold to buy 100 of each of those resources, with stone being a little higher. Last October though, the starting price of food went up to 150 in order to slow down players who were trying to buy their way up to Castle Age, and the change made it as if 800 food had already been bought compared to the old prices. There's a number of interesting things about this change, but probably a good place to start is why players were gravitating toward buying food so often in the first place. It turns out, while needing to buy food may be a result of poor planning, if we look at the numbers, there was an argument that buying food was more optimal than farming it in the past. The reason just comes down to gather rates. Here we have some gather rates in early feudal age, meaning I've assumed you have double bit axe but not wheelbarrow or any of the mining techs. Notice they're all in the low to mid 20 resources per minute, and food is fairly in line with the others. A better way to compare them though is, instead of focusing on resource totals, talk about villager seconds, as in how many seconds of work does it take to gather one of each resource, or 100 as something easier to work with. In this case, the larger the number, the more work we're having to do to gather it, and for farming, I'll give it without and then with wheelbarrow, as farms benefit particularly from that tech. From this, it looks like food is in line with the other resources, but it leaves out a huge factor, which is the wood cost of farms. It's true, other resources require camps, but once you spend that 100 wood, those tend to be useful for a long time, whereas every farm needs a new 60 wood investment roughly every 9 to 12 minutes, depending on if you have horse collar. Of course, the wood for that farm requires some villager work. 100 food gathered from a farm without horse collar uses up 34 wood worth of the farm, and after horse collar is still 24 wood, which takes somewhere around a minute of chopping for a lumberjack to offset. This is one argument you can make for getting early horse collar, as at least over time it indirectly makes food cheaper to gather from the perspective we're taking here. If we go back and include the wood cost of farms being used in our time calculation for each resource, notice that food takes significantly more time to acquire than other resources. This is partly why food is considered a major resource bottleneck in the mid-game, as it's genuinely more work-intensive to get. With the old prices, a gold miner could even theoretically mine the 130 gold needed to buy 100 food with slightly less work than what was required to farm it without wheelbarrow or horse collar. If we instead use the new 150 gold for 100 food exchange rate, notice that's no longer the case, as now even the worst case of farming without wheelbarrow and horse collar takes 36 fewer seconds to get the same 100 food than through mining and market use. This has always been a specifically food issue, by the way, as the time to directly collect 100 wood and stone are 235 and 292 seconds respectively, plus or minus depending on camp efficiency, while to mine the gold required to buy 100 wood takes 2 minutes longer, and to mine the gold for 100 stone takes about 3 minutes longer. Especially with stone, it's very inefficient to use gold mining as a substitute for getting those resources directly, and at this point we can put food in that basket as well, at least for a typical civilization. As you may have noticed if you watch my Civilization Overview series, I love trying to finagle any civ bonus I can into a market bonus, checking if any civilization can double down on its strength and use it to buy other resources faster. A number of bonuses in the past have ended up giving sneaky ways to distribute villagers to get especially food faster than farming, at least temporarily from starting prices. The point was never to completely abandon farming, but in some cases 1 or 2 extra on gold or stone to sell and then buy food let you click up to Castle Age just that 20 or 30 seconds faster. In light of the market change though, now let's revisit those exceptions and see if any of them still hold up. Since it's fresh as my most recent video, we'll start by looking at the Maulians, who get 10% more gold from villagers dropping off. With the exchange rate adjustment, that now puts mining gold to buy food at the new prices basically on the same level as farming with no wheelbarrow or horse collar. Obviously, as you buy at the market, it moves the price up, and farming with horse collar is a little more efficient overall, but things start out at least pretty close to parity. If we add in the gold mining tech, which admittedly has an upfront cost, mining gold as Maulians to buy food is actually not bad, even comparable to farming with wheelbarrow. I don't know if I would go out of my way to get that tech for buying food early, but for Maulians in moderation, it's still a trick that sort of works. Likewise, we can draw similar conclusions with Turks. They get 20% faster gold miners, which I find is probably safer to assume is 18 to 19% after walking time and little inefficiencies creep in. For them, it takes about 352 seconds of mining to buy 100 food, which is less work than farming in early feudal age. That said, it used to take them just 305 seconds, or thereabout, to exchange for 100 food. And you can see what used to feel like a strictly optimal play to buy your way up to an earlier castle age is now another borderline case, where you aren't heavily rewarded or punished. Of course, some stone bonuses also get in on the action here as well, with Poles as an example, who mine stone at the usual rate by adding a third of that total worth of gold also being generated. That makes mining stone to sell a faster way to get gold than mining gold directly, as long as the price is above 72 to sell the stone. As for food generation though, remember Poles have better than average farmers, at least around folwarks, and at best, using stone miners in the market is only roughly on par with farming around a town center. The trick to remember when doing this is the food price goes up as you buy and the stone price goes down as you sell. So the market prices start moving on you twice as fast as usual, and it's really only a trick to use in moderation. Koreans also of course have a stone bonus, in their case with 20% faster stone mining. Previously, they could mine stone and swap it for food at almost exactly the same rate as farmers with wheelbarrow, but after the change, it's now just strictly better to farm from the start. Worth noting as well are Bohemians, who arguably kicked off this whole change thanks to a strategy of aggressively fast castling into Hussite wagons. They get free mining tax, which previously meant mining stone, or even simpler, just mining a bit of extra gold ended up being a way to shortcut around farming. After the change, gold mining is still comparable, but no longer objectively a faster way to get a few hundred extra food. Another example, just to illustrate why this doesn't work with all gather rate bonuses, is for Celts with their faster lumberjacks. At starting prices, it would take 443 seconds to get the wood to exchange for 100 food, which is not even close to beating even the worst farmers, partly because you pay a conversion fee on the sell and the buying end, which is partly why gold bonuses in particular are your best bet to make this whole thing work. Of course, the most notable civilization in this whole discussion is the Saracens, who have just a 5% trading fee, meaning they get far better buying and selling prices, in this case buying food at 121 instead of the usual 150. There's really two strategies here. The first is mining gold directly instead of farming, and in that case, it's about 336 seconds of work to get the 121 gold needed for that, which is right in line with farming with wheelbarrow. Even sneakier though is to mine stone first, sell that at a slight premium for gold, letting you get gold about 17% faster than mining it directly, and then buy food, which as a sequence takes only 288 seconds, making it by far the fastest way we've seen to accumulate food. It's actually on par with Slavs after wheelbarrow, so for Saracens, a grocery shop at the market to buy the way up to Castle Age is definitely still a thing. Ultimately though, we can say Koreans are eliminated from this whole discussion by the price change. Malians, Turks, and Poles are now just basically indifferent to the strategy, or maybe benefit for the first 1 or 200 food they buy, while Saracens are the main ones that still clearly benefit from buying food until the price gets up to around 140 at least. I should point out this change doesn't only have downsides as well. A higher starting price means you generate more gold by selling if you have the extra food and are first to use the market. The first 500 food you sell now nets you 53 more gold than in the past, and the entire walk down to the lowest price, even without guilds, nets 582 more now. So there's an upside for players later in the game, as gold on the map becomes more scarce. Now all of this brings up a topic that seems unrelated, but is actually deeply embedded in all of this. The question is, if you have a bonus to collect a particular resource, especially gold, does it make sense to put fewer or more villagers onto it? And this could really be asked of any resource. That is, should Celts put one extra or one fewer on wood, as an example? Admittedly, it depends is probably the correct answer, but I think there's an argument for one approach over the other as a rule of thumb. The argument for leaning into a bonus by putting extra villagers onto it would be that this is your civilization's edge. So the more villagers you have benefiting from the higher collection rate, the better off you'll be overall. By this argument, Malians, for example, should put extra villagers on gold because then you get the maximum number of villagers working at their greatest specialty. It's something that applies to reality, where a villager skilled at fishing should do that, and the most skilled basket weaver does that, with the two then trading fish for baskets. And in the real world, there's a benefit to everyone through specialization because of trade. The problem in AoE2 is all that trade goes through the market, with prices specifically set up, and as we've seen recently tweaked, to try to make those exchanges slightly punishing. As we've seen with even the best examples I could find, Saracens are the only ones that are reliably exploiting the market to get food significantly faster than farming. Even Malian gold miners getting 10% more gold are just on par with farmers, So someone trying to lean into their bonus by putting more on gold is either just going to be floating 1,000 gold in feudal age, and let's be honest, we've all been there, or they're going to spend that gold buying wood, stone, and food probably less efficiently than just getting those resources directly to begin with. For that reason, as counterintuitive as it might seem at first, I generally lean toward capitalizing on collection bonuses by removing the odd villager, say by putting 6 on gold instead of 7 for double range archers as Turks. It's just a small point about using bonuses, but I think actually flows directly out of the examples we've seen in this video. That'll do it for this one though. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you next time.